Crazy update in the Bryan Kohberger case.
Yeah.
So the families of the victims have filed a lawsuit against Washington State. And my sincere apologies to all of the alums from the University of Washington, which I keep saying is the relevant university, and it's not. And the grads of University of Washington are like, for the love of God, would you say where he actually was a teaching assistant, which was Washington State? You are right, and I was wrong, and that was loose language, which I now humbly correct and apologize for. So they have filed a lawsuit against the university, claiming that the university knew Bryan Kohberger was a predator, a dangerous person to have on campus, and nevertheless not only had him as a PhD student, but went so far as to employ him as a TA in this PhD program of criminology. And they go through the litany of complaints that were made about Bryan Kohberger by, more than a dozen female students and fellow teachers and professors within his department. Brian Enton went through the whole complaint of News Nation. He does a great job, and he outlined it in great detail. Excuse me, here's some of that. Listen to Brian.
In August 2022, early in the semester, a fellow graduate student began leaving her office door open because she believed this guy was going to do something inappropriate with a student, and said that Kohberger struck her as a stalker or a sexual assaulter type. Another fellow graduate student described him as a possible future rapist. He was noted to be obsessed with studying sexually motivated burglars and serial killers. One female graduate student reported that Kohberger would trap her in her office and try to talk to her about the Ted Bundy murders. Multiple female students and staff members were so uncomfortable with Kohberger's behavior that security escorts were arranged for them after 5 p.m. One sophomore student reported that Kohberger had followed her and told her bosses at WSU about the incident. In response, they told her she should not be alone with Kohberger, suggested that campus security should escort her out, and commented that she was not the first to report such problems. During one of several faculty meetings where Kohberger was discussed extensively, one faculty member remarked, "Mark my words, I work with predators. If we give him a PhD, that's the guy that in many years, when he's a professor, we will hear is harassing, stalking, and sexually abusing his students."
Wow. Okay. So they now are accusing Washington State of negligence and of violating Title IX, which is an interesting way in. They argued that the university, located just across Idaho's border, with Washington State, failed to take meaningful action after receiving complaints about Kohberger, at the time a criminology graduate student. They called the murders a foreseeable and, in fact, predictable tragedy. The lawsuit claims the university received 13 formal complaints about Kohberger's inappropriate, predatory, and menacing behavior. Just a couple of more things. Students, they said according to the lawsuit, he repeatedly blocked exits, invaded women's personal space, followed multiple women to their vehicles to the point that they requested personal campus security escorts. You heard some of that. Students fled into bathrooms to hide from him. One WSU employee even advised other employees to email them with the subject line 911 if they were in a situation with Kohberger where they felt threatened by him. WSU employees would often stay in the room where Kohberger was meeting with students in fear of leaving them alone together. These types of predatory occurrences happened from the moment he arrived in Washington State. Maureen, this is very dark, and there is a real question here. At first I was like, how can you blame the university? And the more I read, the more I was like, oh my God, the university knew a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, several things. I think also Brian Enton had talked about even local businesses had a sort of alert system amongst each other about this guy.
I think it was a local bar that had an alert because he would come in and he would speak in very sexist, misogynistic ways to the women.
That you've got at least 2 reports, one of breaking and entering. It's believed he stole a young woman's underwear and perfume.
Yep.
Okay. And then another woman called her boyfriend and was like, there's a white car outside. He's been stalking. This guy's been stalking.
Staring in her windows.
So, it sort of ties in a little bit to that clip you were playing earlier, the Megan Rapinoe, Naomi Watts clip, where why this guy wasn't removed instead of having 13 young women come and say, he's stalking me. He's following me out to my car. He broke into my apartment. This guy's got like, a no-fly. He's on the no-fly list at the local bar. He looks crazy. It's like Nick Reiner. It's in the eyes. He looks it. Instead of removing him because they were worried about a lawsuit, well, now you got a fucking lawsuit. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna make sure that we just keep him, we don't offend him. And girls, you know what? Call us when you want to leave for the day and wait around till somebody can walk you to your car. Are you kidding me?
It was to the point where when the 4 students at the University of Idaho right across the way were killed, more than one of these women said, according to the lawsuit, it was him. Like he was a suspect on the minds of some of these women who knew he was a creep, who felt their exit had been blocked by him. One woman he stared down in his class to the point where she felt so uncomfortable, she went and complained. Like it was described as like an act of dominance over her. I mean, quite clearly, misogynist doesn't cover it, but he had a deep hatred of women to the point where, I mean, Ethan Chapin was killed too, but he was just there with his girlfriend. He was out to kill women that night in that house. And they knew it. These women were saying he will be the sexual predator we're writing about years from now. And they're saying it to the university.
They're saying, you're teaching him how to do this.
Yes.
This is the criminology. How the criminology department hasn't had its doors closed permanently over there is beyond me. It is an obscenity that it exists still.
Yes.
He came in the morning after the murders or the school day after the murders. He had a slash on his face. His hands were cut up. Oh, who do you think could have done this? Are you kidding me?
Yes. And these women are sitting there like, oh my God, look at him. His face is slashed. He's got cuts on his hands. And now, by the way, that new detail, which we didn't know beforehand, does shed some light on the creepy selfies he was doing with the thumbs up in the mirror. Remember in the bathroom, he's all in white. He looks like an albino. And he's like taking his photographs with his thumbs up. He's trying to get his hand on camera to make it look like it's not scratched up at all, but you can't see the other hand. And possibly he put makeup on it, but now it makes more sense. He was trying to create some sort of weird alibi, like, I'm fine. What do you mean? There wasn't a scratch on me. And who knows what he had done to make himself look like he was fine. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower right now and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you are a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, just text MK to 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate of up to $10,000 when you buy by January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898 and claim your eligibility today. Again, just text MK to the number 989898 to check it out. Bryan interviewed not at these universities, but a campus security expert, because most universities have experts who come on and they actually run down threat profiles of anybody on campus about whom they get a complaint. And he was talking about how his university, which went unnamed, but I think he said it was a small university in California, had a ratio of about one of these campus officers who would assess threats and prediction on threat levels per every 10 students. So 1 per 10 students, which sounds manageable to me. And how the ratio at Washington State was grossly out of whack with that. It was like 1 per, several hundred. And he was like, there's no way they could keep up with things under those levels, and then went on to offer a bunch of insights. Here's one of them.
We've got 2 reports of a stalker, and they're both this guy. And this guy is studying and getting a graduate degree, basically getting a graduate degree in sexual assault. In the complaint, I found that the university's threat assessment team uses a protocol called the Waiver 21, which is what we used. And it is a series of potential behaviors that you rate the person on, like is he professed violence? Is it mild, none, medium, or is it prominent? And you take all these things, you give them number values, and you finish up with a score. I went through the waiver 21 just on what I saw in the complaint, and this guy was way up there in threat potential.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
And I did this just off a complaint. These guys had this information years ago. I'm looking at the waiver that they would have used. He had violent fantasies, preoccupation with it, stalking, menacing behavior, job problems, lack of conscience, anger problems, substance abuse, isolation, history of violence, criminality, or conflict. I mean, you've got to realize this person is the ticking time bomb.
And not only did they have him as a student, but again, they chose to employ him and, in a way, forcefully subject groups of young women to him and underneath him, like in a
yes,
he was in an authority position over them.
Yes.
I mean, they need to settle this case.
I mean, I would, oh God, I would really love to know the institutional failures here. And I really would love to know, I think you and I talked about this, but what makes this so, it makes me furious because these things are still not taken with the seriousness with which they should be taken. I don't understand what more these girls and women could have done. I don't know where you go when the university's response is, we'll just get a male escort for you.
Right.
Instead of saying, we're going to get rid of this guy and we're going to have him on the no-fly list and security will be all over this campus making sure he has no access anywhere. I just don't get
That's
it.
not okay. That's not good enough. And you had the one, I think it was a professor teaching in the criminology department who was creeped out by him. It doesn't sound like he was her TA, but she made sure according to the complaint, it's an allegation. All these are allegations. The university has yet to respond. We should keep an open mind for their defense. But this professor, according to the complaint, would keep her door open because she was worried that when young women had to go visit Bryan Kohberger in his TA office, something might happen to them. And she wanted to be able to save them. So she kept her door. I'm like, first of all, terrible position to put this professor in, this female professor. But how about these young girls? Remember in college, you had to see a TA fair amount. Getting direct access to the professor was a lot harder.
Yes.
And so they were forced to deal with this creep while at this university, and they're all talking to themselves about how they're afraid of him. And the university, according to the complaint, knew it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, Maureen. And how did they wind up catching Bryan Kohberger? Well, it was because of the touch DNA. Mm-hmm. That he touched that knife sheath. Mm-hmm. He left that knife sheath in the murder house, and they then gave it to the FBI. They found the touch DNA. They uploaded the results to private databases ultimately and found a match to his dad. And that's how they found Bryan Kohberger. Then they started looking through old files or complaints that they had received. And they put together that Washington State University, a campus police, had said there is somebody with a Hyundai between the relevant ears that matches the description of bushy eyebrows. Anyway, so they find Bryan Kohberger. Imagine if the university had said, why don't we look to see what predators we have on our campus? Let's look to see if there's anybody here who's been accused of being a serial misogynist. They would have had a file from the sound of it, as big as the Webster's Dictionary. They could have caught him a lot sooner. I mean, the family's not exactly alleging they would have caught him sooner. They're alleging he wouldn't have been on campus to commit these crimes if the university had done its duty to protect the community by not inviting and then fostering the continuing presence of a female predator.
This is why I kind of don't want the suit to be settled, because I want as much discovery as possible, because you can't tell me that there weren't people in positions to know at that university who, upon hearing of that crime, thought, holy fucking shit.
It's Bryan Kohberger.
It's Bryan Kohberger. And we ignored every single glaring, waving, enormous red flag, because we were worried that he would sue us.
Yeah.
And now 4 co-eds are dead, and the blood is also on our hands. And I hope that those families get everything they ask for.
He was saying, the security expert was saying, because there is an allegation in the complaint that is the reason they didn't do anything about it. They were worried about getting sued, that there was actually a conversation about that they were worried about getting sued. And yeah, it would have had to be sued by him, like for getting kicked off, for being accused of being a predator. We've seen this at other schools. Sometimes you just got to take the risk of getting sued. You know, that the Washington State University has plenty of money.
Yeah.
They have plenty of money.
Yes.
And this is not going to be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that this guy gets. It's like, all right, you're going to have to pay probably at most a couple $100,000. How is that not worth it?
And maybe you do, but you've got 13 students and no shortage of teachers and administrators at your university, and men who are forced to escort young girls to their cars because he's stalking them on their way out, and have the courage. What kind of criminology department are you running?
Yes.
What kind of institution of higher learning is this?
Okay, so another point on this. I talked about 2 weeks ago, I don't know, since New Year, that interview that Bryan Kohberger's sister gave to the New York Times. And, you know, she's all like, oh, we didn't know. In retrospect, we thought he was kind of autistic, but that's it. The New York Times did not ask, it appears, because they certainly did not report on any Q&A or attempt to get information on the allegations that this sister, Melissa, who gave the interview, knew that she suspected Bryan of the murders and had raised it with her dad prior to him getting caught. That's completely glossed over, not a mention of it in the New York Times. But so all these women, pretty much anybody who came in contact with Bryan Kohberger on this campus thought he was a perverted creep sex pest. But the sister had no idea. The sister was completely clueless that he was just this sweet brother who had reformed his, heroin addiction ways, and was flabbergasted, just shocked, Maureen, shocked. That's what the New York Times would have us believe. I
don't believe a word of it. As we're learning, it's tangential, but as we're learning more about the Nick Reiner case in the house, that was a very sick house. That Reiner house was a very sick house. Now we're learning he was placed in a conservatorship back in 2020, that he had violent outbursts, that he had been threatening before. I don't buy for a second that the sister had no idea that her brother, I would imagine that was one of those moments when a sibling leaves the nest where a sigh of exhale of relief was like, thank God he's gone. And I didn't know until listening to your show that he had called the mother, demanding to speak to the mother
5
within
calls.
hours, and was talking to her allegedly from outside the crime scene.
Yes,
which he went
3 hours, starting 2 hours after the crimes were committed. From 2 hours after the crimes were committed, he spent 3 of the next 5 hours on the phone with his mother.
You can't tell me she didn't know.
She's
a mother.
That's our opinion. Allegedly, reportedly.
She knew.
Yeah,
she knew.
I agree. And now, but the New York Times wants to do a whitewashing for this family. I'm not saying it's their fault. I'm just saying they know more than they're letting on. And the New York Times should not have let the sister get away with this.
The New York Times should have spiked that piece. It was journalistic malpractice.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.